Hello, friends. Welcome to the Veterinary Life Coach Podcast. Today, I have a wonderful guest for you. Her name is Suzy Wraines. She is the founder and podcast host of Starting a Business Simplified, and she is a certified trauma energetics coach. She's a trailblazer in the world of entrepreneurship and a passionate advocate for medical professionals looking to transition into business ownership. So she's the perfect guest for us today, and I'm very excited to have her here. Welcome to the podcast, Suzy.
Thank you, Julie, so much for having me.
I'm delighted to have you here. So my first question to all my guests is always to tell me their story. And you have a bit of a veterinary story, so I could even say that. But tell me the story of how you got to where you are today, as much as you want to tell.
Yeah, thank you for asking. And I do want to say that this veterinary piece is always in my story. So I so appreciate being on your podcast. It's the first
Yay.
one
Yay
that
for
I get to.
veterinarians, right?
I know, I know. I'm like,
Vet
I get to
med.
talk about my veterinary stuff. I'm so excited. So thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
And I do share it. And it's kind of like I glaze over it because most people in my audience right now, maybe after being on this podcast, I'll get some veterinarians in there,
Get
but
some new
most
listeners.
of them, yeah, most of them are human medical, which I come from that background too. So long story short, so I'm going to say I like to tell all of my stages of where I came from. So stage one was when I was younger. I was in corporate business. So I was doing sales forecasting, budgeting for big corporations, big numbers, spreadsheets, very much numbers. I joined the Army a little bit later in life. I was about 29 when I joined the Army as a medic, but I wanted to be a veterinary technician in the Army. They have a position in the Army that's vet tech. And I did want that job to begin with. I always wanted to work with animals. And when I talked to my recruiter, they were like, we do have an opening, but it's a year away. I'd have to wait a whole 12 months. I was already 29. I was kind of pushing it for how old I was to go into the military. And I was like, I need to, if I don't do it now, and I've shared this in other stories, not only the age limit, but the fear factor. Like it took me a lot to like want to go to, I didn't really want to go to basic training, but to have the courage to say, I'm going to go to basic training and go through this
Yeah, that
difficult
would be
thing.
something I would imagine.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I can't wait a year. What other jobs do you have that I could accept and join right now? And I loved medicine, science. It's something that stood out to me. So I was like, I'm really curious about that. And they train you. Why not? He's like, well, you could join today as a medic. We need medics right now. And I was like, okay, sign me up. So I went through that whole route. And basically, I was a paramedic at the end of it, the training portion of it. And I ended up being attached to an engineering company that went into Iraq. So I did spend a year in Iraq as a medic, looking for roadside bombs. So I was out in the field with them, learned a ton, came home, and I had some physical injuries as well as PTSD. Took me a long time to actually say that out loud, but when I came home, I was medically discharged from the Army. And after some time of working through what had happened, I was like, I'm going to go do the veterinary thing now. Like I'm older, but I can still do it. I can still do the
Right.
thing. I
Yeah.
had some neck and back injuries. And so it was a little bit of a challenge. I know your listeners know. And I'm so excited to be able to share this with people that understand
We
restraint,
understand. Yeah.
like restraint, animal restraint. It's not a bad word. That was challenging because you're very physical in the veterinary world.
Absolutely.
And so for me, it was like, okay, I have to overcome this physical thing, but I'm also overcoming some mental stuff. Didn't realize until there were situations in surgery where certain smells would happen. And I would be like, oh, something's going on here. My nervous system would kick in.
Really?
I had a challenge with, I so appreciate being able to share my stories with you guys. I feel like you're my people with euthanasia. When owners, the look on their face
Yeah.
would bring me back to a soldier who just got blown up, like their team member getting injured or something happening to someone. It was like that same
That
look
grief
that,
and that trauma that people go through when they're grieving someone else, that would trigger you.
yeah, yeah, it was like
It's
I
crazy.
knew what they were going through. I could,
Yeah,
and
it
it was
does.
a, so our nervous system is so wired for body language. And
Mm.
coming from veterinary, we get this. If you move a certain way around animals, they're going to pick up on that, pick up on energy, pick up on our stance, how we're, I love that I don't have to explain all this to people on your podcast because they understand. You have no idea. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have to tell them this. So
I gotta get you on some other veterinary podcasts, I guess, huh?
yeah, totally. So the interesting thing is like the look on their face. My nervous system would see that,
Mm,
and instantly I would be back in the war zone and I'd have to step away. And my doctors knew. I would tell them when I got hired, I worked for private practice, a couple of different private practices, and then I worked for a big hospital. Um, but I always told my employer, I said, look, I just want to let you know because I know I might get triggered. And if I do, what's the plan? Like, how can I
how
remove
can I
myself? If I'm
escape? Yeah,
assisting in surgery, there was a couple of times I was in surgery and I was like, just breathe, and kind of, but they knew so I could say something to a place where
right.
they could grab somebody else if they
Yeah,
needed to, because it was severe. There were many times I would have to leave, um, and just be like, one of my doctors, they had this huge recliner in their office, which was amazing. And they're like, go sit down. They bring me a blanket. I was like, you guys are so amazing. But it
yeah,
was stuff I had to deal with. Like it was
right.
really happening. And and I remember one day I told my husband, I was like, I think I can't do this anymore because I didn't know how to regulate it. I didn't know. And I felt bad. I would get migraines, which I think were stress triggered
Probably.
from, well, that it's a stressful environment. And then with me managing my nervous system, PTSD, things that were happening that I wasn't in control of because it was just automatically happening. I think that
Right.
was another thing that triggered my migraines. I share this with my story all the time. I became a coach so that I could control my environment,
Mm,
so
that's
that I could
interesting.
like go lay down if I needed to, or
Yeah.
step away from my computer if I needed to, because I felt that out of control with, like, when I went into the clinic, who knows what's going to happen that day?
Right.
Who
It's
knows
very
what's going to,
unpredictable. Yeah. It's a very unpredictable environment. And some days it's calm and some days it's crazy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And you just don't know.
Hmm.
And so I did transition. I went from being a technician in the back to being a receptionist. One of my doctors that I worked for, they're like, we really don't want to lose you. And would you be? And I'm like, yeah, I don't mind doing reception. I still love being around the animals and the people. And so I did that for a little while. And then I was like, uh, my nervous system just can't handle this. And I didn't know anything else to do. So, Julie, meeting you, if I would have known you 6 years ago, I might even still be working in veterinary medicine because I would have had somebody to talk to and be like,
Help
hey,
you.
how do I
Yeah.
manage this
Right.
that's happening? But I
Yeah.
didn't know. Yeah. So I ended up going to health coaching school and I got certified in health and life coaching, thinking, well, my medical background is going to be good for that. I
Right.
understand. I can do that from home. I can control my environment. But I realized I didn't like it. Like, I'm like, I don't like health coaching. Like, that's different than clinical care. It's totally different.
Sure. Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? And I love business. And when I was in the Army, I actually wrote policies and procedures and things that actually helped save time, save hours. I was at an Army hospital and I worked in the recovery room and I helped them write a whole thing to save hours for their intake person that was intaking all the surgeries. It came, like my business brain would kick in and I would combine the two. And I go, hey, we can save some hours over here and we can save some money over there. And so I was helping them anyway. So after I got certified, I was like, what do I want to do? I think I'm going to do business coaching because I love business and I get it, I can see it, and it just comes naturally to me. And then I was trying to decide who I wanted to do business coaching for, and about 9 months into starting Business Simplified, it clicked and I went, medical people, because I get it.
Perfect. Yeah, because you've been there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know how
And
they
so,
think.
yeah. Yeah. So that was, gosh, I'm going into, that was 3 years ago. So I'm going into my fourth year. Absolutely love it. When I talk to, and again, talking to you and just talking veterinary, love that. So I always share in my story, my veterinary, because it was such a catalyst for me to move into doing something different. But I love all medicine, veterinary, animal, human, doesn't matter. I still have a compassion for it and passion for people and animals in that capacity, but I just want to help in a different way. So a lot of my clients now, they either want to start their own practice, so they'll come to me and we'll map out their whole foundational, like, how are you going to run your back office? What do you really need? What do you not need now, but you might need later? How are you going to, what services are you going to provide? A lot of the people I work with are doing online, similar to what you're doing, Julie, with coaching, either coaching, consulting. I have mental health counselors that are doing some of that online versus doing it in person anymore. So just a lot of different variable things. I have coached a couple of people that do animal behavior, which was
Okay.
really cool.
Yeah.
So things that they want to do outside of working in a clinical setting. So yeah, it's been a journey, but I appreciate you and what you're doing. And when I found your podcast, I was like, I got to talk to Julie.
Well, I love doing what I'm doing now, but I also loved working in the clinic. Like that's part of the reason that I wanted to do this, so I could help people like you that wanted to work in vet med but just couldn't quite figure out, where they belonged or what they could handle, and you have a unique story because of all the PTSD that you had from being in the service. So, when did you realize that trauma piece versus the coaching part of it? Like, when did you figure that out and go, oh, I need to coach or get coached in order to try to regulate my nervous system? Like, when did that pop in for you?
Great question. I was in denial that I had anything that was happening there for a long time, even though
Yeah,
I
which
knew
a
I
lot of
had.
us are, right? Yeah, because
Mhm.
we don't
Yep.
we don't know what's happening. We don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would name it. I'd be like, "Hey, I know I have PTSD, but internally that wasn't accept. I didn't accept it to
Mm,
be able to heal through it, to be able to
gotcha.
process it. It was like it's
Right.
just a label. We'll just slap a label
Just
on
the
it."
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is why I do what I do. This is why I became trauma energetics certified. Until I processed my nervous system trauma, I wasn't moving forward as an entrepreneur. So I was doing things. I was putting together programs. I had a few clients, but not anything that was sustainable. I didn't really have a plan. I had a little bit of a plan, but I wasn't completely open to any and all opportunity, because I
Mm,
realized going through the trauma energetics program that my nervous system was keeping me safe. It only knew safety.
right.
So when I knew I had a client call, my nervous system would kick in and I wouldn't know. I would just go, why do I feel weird? Why do I not want to talk to this person? What's going on here? Like internally.
Right.
But going through trauma, having my own trauma coach, we identified that my nervous system was wired from treating patients in a first responder in a war zone. If I don't help them, they will die. That's what my nervous system is thinking.
Oh, so even when you were coaching somebody, that's what your thoughts were. Yeah, that would be intimidating.
Unconsciously. So I
Right.
wasn't mentally going, oh, that's what I'm feeling, thinking. But once I was aware of it, then I could change it. Then
Right.
I could let it go and I could be
Start to
like,
work on it.
that's
Yeah.
not true. It's not true. When I get on a Zoom call, they're fine. I'm fine. Everybody's fine.
Right.
I know, and I can reprogram my nervous system. So I'm not in fight, flight, or freeze in that moment. And through meditation, through the trauma energetics coaching is actually the client does the work. So when I sit with somebody, and this comes up when with entrepreneurs, when they're having a resistance point.
Mm.
So I don't want to look at my bookkeeping. Well, why not? Is there a trauma there? Do you have something that happened that makes you not want to look at something, or procrastinate, or I don't want to do a sales call? Well, what's going on there? What is really going on there? Not I'm uncomfortable, it's just uncomfortable, but there's something deeper
Right.
that they're just like, I don't want to do that. For me, it was speaking up. It was actually using my voice and sharing my story. I wouldn't even be on this podcast if I hadn't gone through the coaching that I did.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell people I was in the Army. It was
Because
so,
there was so much trauma behind it. Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, but if I say that, then all of this. So one of the things that is identified with this type of coaching, Stephen Kessler wrote a book, 5 Personality Patterns, and they use the book in the coaching program, and it's defensive nervous system patterns. We adopt them when we're in childhood development, and it's not good, bad, or anything. It's just how we perceive life at the different stages of development.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the patterns I had is called the enduring pattern, and it's a defensive pattern. And I push my energy down and avoid and like don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to speak up in case it doesn't follow with what everybody else thinks. So it was challenging for me as an entrepreneur to put myself out there
Sure, it
and
would be.
actually like, because you're an entrepreneur, like we have to talk about what we do. And especially online, you have to talk about yourself, talk about who you are and what you do and how you do it and how are you helping people. And I would just talk about things that people could Google. So it's
Mm.
kind of like, well, who's Suzy?
Right, right. There was no personality behind it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We're so unique that anybody can write a business plan, but I can help people from my perspective.
Right.
The experiences that I've had in life have created this way of thinking that I have. And so the trauma energetics, when I went through it for my own healing, helped me remove these defensive patterns. It's safe to talk. It's safe to speak up. Um, it's safe to have clients. Like they're not going to die. Nobody's going to die. It's okay. And so being able to process that energy in my nervous system to where I can say, pretty much, I would say pretty much I can talk about anything and be comfortable. Um, where 2 years ago, I can remember this would be a very different conversation that we were having. I don't even
Right,
think I would
right.
be on this
This would be
podcast.
super scary, right? Even though we're just sitting here on Zoom talking, it's not that big of a deal. It would be a big deal for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
interesting. S- So I guess I'll go this way because I have a lot of questions. Can you explain exactly what the trauma energetics is? Because you're a certified coach in this particular um, methodology and you benefited from it. So you
Hmm.
were coached in this trauma energetics and then you took it on.
Yep.
Yeah. So can you tell us about that? Because I haven't heard,
Yeah.
I don't think anything about it before.
It's a combination. So somatic work, so body-based work
Okay.
and energy work. So it combines the physiology, our nervous system, fight, flight, or freeze response, with the energy. Our body, we have our own energy body. And so metaphysically, it extends out past our body. So we're working with energy, but we're also working with the nervous system.
Okay.
So for example, the patterns, they follow an energetic flow. So one of the stages of development, 0 to 7 years old, we adopt whatever pattern helps us deal with life at that stage.
Mhm.
And there's gifts and there's defenses. So so leaving pattern is 0 in utero to like 6 months old. You can't do anything for yourself. You're so small and a baby. So your energy leaves your body. So if you get stressed out or you have an overwhelming experience, then your energy leaves. And a lot of people I identify with using this pattern because my mom had a situation happen when she was having me, when I was being born. Those are people that check out. They're kind of spacey. They forget things because they're just they very creative thinkers, like just they're just in another world. They have a hard time associating with their body and actually feeling being in their body. And then the merging pattern, the next pattern in the developmental stages, they are at the place where they're getting help from others. So this is when they're babies to like 18 months old. And so they're learning, oh, I can get stuff from somebody else. So somebody who is in a defensive pattern, that way they might be asking for people to always do things for them. I don't know if you've ever experienced, you might be thinking, oh, I've worked with people like this. It drives you crazy because you're like, you know how to do it, just do it. And they're like, but
But they're insecure. There's like an insecurity there. Okay. That makes
yep.
sense. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're pulling energy from other people to be able to feel like it's enough for them. They have a hard time holding their energy on their own. And then there's the enduring, which I explained. We push our energy down. So those are the people that won't tell you they're mad. They'll smile at you,
The
but
Genny
inside they're
Sackers.
like, I can't stand you. Okay, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it from my perspective, but I think that a lot of your listeners can relate to this. How many times did you have a client that you would get ready to go into the room to talk to them and you knew who they were and how they were, and you're like, how are you doing today? And inside you're like, this person makes me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that happens a lot, right? I used to say that we need acting classes in order to be veterinarians because you do have to kind of put on an act sometimes with people.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. And the thing about the patterns is they're subconscious, so we don't realize we're doing it. Some of them we realize we're doing, but other times it just happens automatically. Challenger defender patterns, these are in a defensive pattern, they throw their energy out, so they're very aggressive, very demanding, very controlling. So if they're feeling like they're being attacked or they're overwhelmed, those are the people that yell. And I had officers in the Army, like a lot,
Yeah, a lot of
and
them.
doctors, medical people in the Army. Love you guys. I'm not saying anything against you, but you have double whammy because you have their medical licenses and is a big deal. And you also have their military. So they what they say is how it goes. That's just how it
Right.
is.
Yeah.
Totally respectable. And again, there's gifts of these. They're not all bad. But if you're doing it in a situation that doesn't require it, if you're just throwing out, yelling at people for no reason,
Right.
that's the unhealthy side. And then the last one is rigid, which is very perfectionism. So they do everything by the law, by the letter. Accountants, people that are just really legal people. Like, again, good qualities to have. But if you're
Mhm.
doing it defensively, for example, as an entrepreneur, I'm not going to do this till it's perfect. I'm not going to put this email out until it's perfect. I'm not
Right.
going to launch my website until it's perfect.
And then you never do it because it's never perfect. Yeah. Yeah. That holds
Yeah.
a lot of veterinarians, and you probably know this because you worked with them, are very much perfectionistic types. I mean, I don't like to generalize, but as a general rule, we all have that little bit of perfectionism that sometimes holds us back. It keeps us from doing our best work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told the story on my podcast recently because I'm doing a series right now on my podcast about the patterns and how they show up as an entrepreneur. And the example that comes to me all the time is I had a technician that I worked with, and she came to me and she's like, will you please go take this record to the doctor? We worked with a doctor who was a very challenger defender, but not in a negative way. She was just in the gift of it, which is very straightforward, direct. You always knew where you stood. You always knew she would give you a straight up answer. I
Right.
loved her. I mean, I was like, yeah, not a problem. She's like, she scares me. Will you take this to her? I was like, sure, but I'm just going to tell you, she's a person just like you.
Yeah.
She just has a different way of being. And,
Right.
um, but it's just interesting how that I could tell that that technician was in a defensive pattern because she couldn't handle working with somebody that was just like, hey, this is how it is.
Right.
And her way was to hide. It was like, I'm
Yes.
not going to go there. And
Make someone else
that's
do it.
showing something going on with her that has nothing to do with the doctor.
Right.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But inside she has stuff going on. And I know as a life coach, you can relate to that. We do behaviors that don't match what we're doing right now. And that's where the pattern stuff comes up. And that's a huge part of the trauma energetics, is identifying what you're doing with your energy and how you're managing that.
And trying to understand yourself first and where all
Mm-hmm.
this comes from. And then from there, trying to manage it. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
That makes sense.
be able to say, I love this example. It'll be a good way for your listeners to understand too. When I was little, my brother made fun of me. Okay. He's an older brother.
That's what
That's
they
what they
do.
do. Kids
Right.
do that. So it's not right or wrong, but me being the youngest and I was an emotional kid, he would make fun of me if I cried. I expressed myself through crying. If I was happy, I cried. If I was sad, I cried. If I was upset, I cried. Like, it was just what I did
Right.
at a very young age, like 3. So I grew up thinking that expressing myself was bad
Mm,
because I didn't want to be made fun of.
right.
Subconsciously, that wired in my nervous system. So to me, expressing myself was a negative thing to do.
Was dangerous. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Learning that, I was like, oh, I'm not 3 anymore. I can tell my nervous system it's okay.
Right.
When I get that feeling welling up inside of me, which we get it, our body is always talking to us. So if I'm in a situation where I want to speak up and express myself and my body starts doing things, which the coaching is where you identify that. So for me, I'd get a lump in my throat. So I'd be like, okay, there it is. What am I going to say to myself in this moment to bypass and allow that to leave so that I'll speak up? So it's like creating those takes time. It wasn't something I just one coaching session, woke up the next day and I was great. I had
Sure.
to keep reminding myself. So it was
Yeah.
that self-talk. You're safe. I used the mantra, speaking up is healthy, is what
Okay.
I would think.
Yeah, I like to encourage people that I coach and on this podcast even to come up with some of those mantras, like I have little ones hanging right here that are mine. I have little,
Yeah.
3x5 cards that are hanging off my microphone or whatever, just to kind of remind myself of what I'm working on. Because I think
Yeah.
sometimes those thoughts come so easy and so quickly, we don't even realize it sometimes, and we have to be prepared for them. So if we have something in
Yeah.
front of us, or in our pocket or whatever, okay, this is the thought we need to let that go or whatever. So yeah, I think that's genius. I love the mantras.
And
Yeah,
identifying what body sensation is happening when that, because the sensation will happen before the thought.
sure.
So
Absolutely.
I help people, and people that exercise the leaving pattern, they don't notice their body. So a lot of times in a session with them, I'll ask them, where do you feel that in your body? And they'll be like, I don't. So then it's practicing grounding. How are you
Right.
going to ground, bring your energy back into your body, and just do little things like, this is me. Like, it's I, coming from a science background, medical background, when I heard about this, I was like, that's weird. It's like,
It's
energy,
woo-woo,
are
right?
you really?
Yeah.
Energy, really?
Yeah.
You
What are you
can't
talking
see
about?
it, but
Right.
you can feel it. But
Yeah.
I also was using the enduring and leaving patterns, which means I didn't feel my body at all.
Right.
So it was hard for me. And I had a lot of coaching sessions and practice with the enduring pattern. You move, you want to move your body because it moves your energy. And I didn't want to do that. So I was a hard case. I'm like, stuff is weird. So when I went through the coaching for myself and started to see the result, that's when I wanted to be certified. I'm like, I want to know, because I know entrepreneurs are going to struggle
Right.
with
Yeah.
what's happening. And you and I talked about it before we hit record, collecting money.
Yes. Yeah. Talk
Every
about that a
single one
little
of my
bit.
clients. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single one of my clients, I don't know if I can take money.
It happens a lot to young veterinarians because we just get out of school and we don't feel a lot of veterinarians feel that imposter syndrome, like how I just graduated, how can I charge all this money for my services? Yeah, it's a real thing, and it's one of those things that I do coach on a lot, but talk about it a little bit from your perspective.
Yeah, from my perspective, so I'm going to talk human medicine versus veterinary.
Sure.
So on the human medicine side, and especially being in the military, we didn't pay for nothing. Like there was nobody
It was
exchange.
all free, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like you just show up and you treat the patients and they leave.
Right.
Nothing.
Don't have to
Yeah,
talk about
and the compassionate service, like being a person from the medical industry, we just want to help. We just want to serve. We just want to make somebody else feel better. We're not thinking about money. That's like the last thing on our mind. But also, we have a skill that most people don't have, which requires us to ask for money. I have a nurse client right now, and I'm like, every time she has a conversation with somebody, they're like, really? And they like soak it in. She's like, I said, do you realize how much value you have? You went to school to acquire all this amazing knowledge. You have to charge for it because they didn't go to school. I mean, they could have, but they didn't.
right,
So they
right.
need to pay you to give them the information that you're able to give them from your business service, from what it is that you're providing. And it's just a hard concept to step into. So for me, I left the army. And then when I was in veterinary medicine, I didn't realize until the first time I had to do it that we take full payment. Didn't even cross my mind. I was like,
Right, right. Not
yeah,
insurance or yeah,
I
yeah.
walked to check a patient out and I walked to the front and that'll be $1,500. And I was like, whoa. My body, my whole body, I could feel that I was so uncomfortable. And it's a lot. And, but again, in that industry, people, and it's hard for people that not everybody could afford the veterinary services. And I understood that. But for a lot of people, they knew they were going to get charged. We put big signs up that say we
Right.
take payment at the time of service. Like it's not a last minute thing. And we always do. I know for our clinic, we always did estimates. So we would tell them, hey, what services do you want? Check off what you
Right.
want. Here's what the total is going to be. So very transparent, but still uncomfortable. And so I had that experience and realized I knew that was going to be a challenge for the clients that I work with coming from
Yeah.
the human medicine.
So tell people that out there that are having trouble with that, presenting that, here's my estimate and it's $500 or $1,000 or $1,500 or whatever it is. Tell them how that they can coach themselves to be okay with that. I mean, obviously, we went to school, we've got all this debt, all those things are logical, but it's that in the moment feeling that you should be kind or you're worried about these people because they don't have the money or whatever. Like, how do you coach people through that?
Yeah, so I have two ways, and I used both of these myself. The first one is we never know what somebody else can afford ever.
True.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen some really rich people that don't look like it. They don't dress like it. And some really poor people that have all the things, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And not to mention, I add to that in my thinking, people will pay for what is valuable to them. They'll find a way. Not
Absolutely.
that we're going to like eke out as much money as we can, but people have a choice. They're going to choose. If they want to work with you, they will pay you. If
Right.
they really want to work with you, they'll pay you without you talking them into it and doing all of that not so good stuff. But you
Yeah.
just presenting and saying, this is how much it is to work with me. We don't know what somebody else is capable of. And we can't read their mind. We just don't know. So what a coach told me this, and I was like, oh, she's like, if you don't know what they're thinking, it doesn't affect you. So you can let that go. It's being okay with somebody saying no. So the second thing that I tell people is we can't serve everybody. I could not serve the billions of people on the planet. First of all, not all of them are going to want to work with me anyway. But second of all, I'm only one person. So if I'm thinking every single person I connect with, I need to have as a client, then that's not the right way to think. I want to work with the people that want to work with me, which is going to be a smaller pool. So I'm going to get far more no's than I get yeses. And I don't want everybody to say yes, because if everybody said yes, I'd have too many people that I couldn't serve all of them. And then I would feel bad that I couldn't help everybody. Yes, that's a good problem to have, but being okay with the no. And I like to do visualization. So I picture a line of people at a retail store. I'm an online coach. My people are lined up in front of my desk. Someone walks up. We have a little chat. Maybe they don't fit. I want to recommend them to somebody else because I'm not a good fit for them, or they're not a good fit for me. They move on. Another person steps up. It's a never ending line. Some will say yes, some will say no, and that's okay. So being okay with the no and knowing you don't know what people can afford, that takes one layer down. The next one is you practice. You practice asking for money. And you practice. So I do an exercise with my clients. I make them visually think about the different price points that they want to charge. And I ask them, what do they feel in their body? So I have a client, if she visualizes, okay, $3,000, I'm going to ask somebody for $3,000. No, I'm not. My body is like, I can't ask that. But if I say, okay, 2,500, yeah, I could do that. Start small. Yeah. Do it in stages. See what it is that your nervous system is okay with.
Right.
I did that. When I first started my practice, I started at a lower rate, got comfortable with that number, got comfortable with my coaching. Now I know as doctors coming out of school and having a clinic, there's standard. So start at the standard, whatever the standard is for the service. So if you have a standard rate for exams, go with the standard because everybody else is. Like, you're not charging more than anybody else.
Right.
And then work with that. And then if you have a service that's above and beyond somebody else, then you can think about maybe we should ask a little bit more, but in the time that feels right for you. There's always a standard, I think, that we fall under in any industry. And I tell people, research your industry, go ask other people what they're charging, and then find what fits you.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, because there might be people listening that are working in a practice for someone else, or they're thinking about transitioning into doing something on their own, whether it's a house call practice or euthanasia practice, or there's so many businesses out there now that veterinarians can start. Talk to me about what advice you would give those people that are thinking about being an entrepreneur, but it sounds kind of scary and they're not sure what to do. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I love this question. I always tell people that there's three things that you need to do when you want to start a business. Have a service that you provide that there's a need. So whatever it is that you're thinking about, that there's a need for it. It's okay if there's a whole bunch of people doing it, but there's a need. It's not, and I don't believe that things are oversaturated because we're individuals and we have unique gifts that we bring. So it's okay if a lot of people are doing the same thing, but there is a need. The second one is for you to be able to give the client an experience that is unique. Okay. So whatever that service is, how are you delivering it to where people are like, you have to go see Julie? Because there's a unique thing about you that nobody else has.
Right.
And the last thing that I tell people is you want to be able to talk about this all the time, like to the point where you love talking about it to anybody and everybody, and you're not uncomfortable with it. The biggest challenge I get with my clients coming to me is I'll say, okay, what's your service? Who are you and what's your service? So tell me about it. They have a really hard time.
Yeah. And then they freeze up, right? So, okay. So that makes total sense. how do you, well, and I know this from my perspective, but how would you coach someone that has that entrepreneur inkling, but is afraid? I mean, they're scared. They're scared that they're not going to be able to make enough money. They're scared to just, drop their good job that's full time and, stick their toe in the water to start a new business. How do you teach them um, to understand where they're coming from and then just take the plunge, because that's I
Yeah.
think the hardest thing. I mean, when I bought my practice, I was like, oh, I don't know anything about other than I worked there, but I didn't have business courses. I think I had one accounting class in college just because I knew I wanted to be an owner, so I took accounting.
Mm.
But to just be strong enough to just say, okay, I'm doing this.
The fact that you said accounting is totally in line with how I'm going to answer this. It's something that most people don't like to do, but so when I work with clients, I walk them through this so delicately and comfortably and simply. If you look at your numbers, you're instantly going to get confidence, because I think the imaginary world of numbers is way scarier
Fearful,
than when
yeah.
you're actually looking at numbers. So whether it's a full-blown practice that you're getting, when you sit down and you look at how many exams do we need to do a day to meet how many staff members we have, like
Goals, right.
granular level,
Hmm.
then you go, oh, well, we only need to have 6 exams at this price and we're good as long as we don't hire more than this many people. Like the actual looking at the numbers. And I work with mental health providers who want their private practice, and they're doing online. So they're not hiring staff. They don't have any overhead or anything. And I just do a basic spreadsheet with them. And at the end of it, they go, wow, I can cut my workload in half leaving working for somebody else. I can
Right,
see half the patients and make the same amount of money.
right.
And all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're like, oh, that job's not so secure. It's like,
Yeah,
now, the other piece of that, when I get the question, I don't want to do sales, or how do I get clients? How do I get patients? How do I fill my roster?
right.
I tell people that if you like to talk about who you are and what you do, then that's what you do in whatever way you can. And people will refer. So if you give a good client experience, above and beyond client experience, what do we not have in society right now? It's like in the door, out the door. Get as many people in as you can. Like
Right.
nobody's getting attention.
Yeah.
Nobody's getting that
Not
personal
getting
touch.
that
So
personal service.
yeah, yeah. So if you can show up and do exceptional patient client care, then you're going to get referrals. My business has been built on referrals mostly.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so what have I not asked you that I should before we have to wrap this up?
Well, one thing I like to I like to share with people is as an entrepreneur, you get to decide, other than anything that falls under the requirement of your license. So whatever it is that you're doing, if you have license requirements, you need to do those. But everything else that's not legally required by your license, you get to design your business.
I love that about running my own practice. I mean, you have to run it a certain way, right?
Mhm.
But you're in charge, which that's why I love entrepreneurship is, I guess I don't like to be bossed, but
Yeah,
if
yeah,
it's
I know.
true,
Yeah. And I think people forget when they come from, so if you're coming from working for somebody or working in a clinic or working in a hospital or wherever, you forget that because you're
right,
used to, oh, it's their rules. They said, and a lot of times I get people that don't know how to make their own rules. They're like, oh, I get to make my own. You do have to have some because like, oh, we can do whatever. And I'm like, wait, no, boundaries. You got to make your
right,
boundary because
right. Yeah. Yeah, there is
otherwise
some of
your,
that involved, right?
yeah, otherwise your clients and your staff they'll have a hard time. So you definitely need to, but you get to make them.
Right. Well, and there's help. right? Like I got a lot
Mhm.
of help. My dad was an accountant, so he helped me. My mom was a banker, so she helped me. My kids helped, my husband helped, coaches,
I was going to say, hire the people you can to do the jobs you don't know how to do or that you need
right?
help with for sure.
Yeah,
Um, and know what their job is, though. Like,
right.
know what it is you need them to do and then hire them. But that's why I exclusively work one on one with my clients. So I know there's a lot of business coaches out there that do group coaching and programs and
Right,
whatever. I'm like,
right,
nope, because I do foundational building. Um, we're going to set up your pricing, your services, your back office. So, how are you processing everything? How are you
right.
taking money? How are you setting up your bookkeeping? Like all of that. I do one on one, and my program is a year long on purpose because you're doing a whole business. You're not going to set up a business in a month.
Yeah, and I
So,
think that's a good point. You definitely have to plan ahead, and you definitely, especially if you're going to step out and start from scratch, you really have to do a lot of the work before you mic drop on your actual job, right?
yeah, yeah. And if you're buying a practice or buying a business from somebody else, a lot of that stuff's already in place. So, it's a lot easier. I
Sure.
do work with entrepreneurs that are shifting. Maybe they're shifting their business. So they might be switching platforms or switching how they do services or things like that. So I help them because you are pretty much kind of starting over. You're
Right.
bringing some of the old and just moving it around and changing it up a little bit. But
Right.
yeah, that's a great point is you have to have the time to lay the foundation. But another thing I tell people is, and I heard this on a YouTuber, which I was like, I love you. He said, you're a business owner as soon as you sell to a stranger. You make
Yeah,
that money exchange.
right. Yeah. When you take in $1 even, yeah, you're already an entrepreneur. Yeah. I just I think entrepreneurship is fun and interesting and challenging and all the things. And I have worked with some veterinarians that have started new businesses and bought practices, and I love that process. So I just want to encourage people that have that inkling that I should be an entrepreneur. I want to be an entrepreneur. It doesn't even have to be in vet med. You could start some rando business on the side even. I've had people, I'll ask them, what do you love to do? And they're like, oh, I love to bake cookies. It's like, well, you could start a cookie business. It has to be something that you're really interested and passionate about. But I think other than that, like that's the start. And, even though you're afraid, there's ways to get around that.
Yeah. And I want to say hire a coach, someone
Yes.
like Julie, someone like
Right.
myself. Pick
Yeah.
one that you resonate with. I have a coach. I live, eat, breathe, sleep by coaching
Yeah. It's so
because it just
helpful.
helps you grow and expand.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Well, this has been super fun. I love talking about business and entrepreneur, and I love your story. I'm sure there's a lot more that we could dig into together, but we'll save
Well,
that for another day. Since you love
I
vets so much, you can come back.
thank you. I know. And I really appreciate you sharing my story, listening to my story because it's healing. It's
Yeah,
healing for me that I glaze over the veterinary part because I'm like, most people I'm talking to don't really know what I'm talking about. To talk
they
about
don't get it.
euthanasia, to
Yeah,
talk about restraint, those are like, you say that in the human medicine world, and they're like, what?
right. Yeah, they don't understand how our business works, do they? Really? I mean, unless they have a pet, and even then, I don't think sometimes they get it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a whole
It is
different
two
ball
different
game.
worlds.
Yeah. Well, tell people where they can find you.
Oh,
If they
okay.
if they want to get coached by you or they want to learn more, if they want to listen to your podcast, tell them where all that is.
Yeah. So it's really easy. Starting a business simplified.com. If you go to my website, you'll see that you can find my podcast. You can find all the services that I provide. I have an entrepreneur community that I do. There's information about that there where entrepreneurs come together and we support each other and help with some of the things you and I talked about. Really, it's the higher purpose entrepreneur community, and you can get to it on my website. And we practice asking for money. We have seasoned entrepreneurs in there that give advice and help. We have brand new people who are like, I don't know what to say. Okay, practice. We're going to do that on this live call. So
Right.
if
That's
people are
awesome.
interested in that, they can find that there too.
Well, that's really cool. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I loved meeting you and hearing your story, and we'll keep in touch and hopefully do some more.
Thanks, Julie, so much.
So everyone, this is Suzy Wraines. It's with a W, but her website is startingabusinesssimplified.com, right? Is that what you said?
Yep.
All right. So have a beautiful week, everyone. Bye. Thanks for listening. Bye, Suzy.